21 News presents special Decision 2021 coverage, the Democratic race for Youngstown mayor.
Good evening. It is debate night where 3 candidates will share one stage vying to become the nominee, the Democratic nominee for the Youngstown mayor. I'm your moderator, Lindsay McCoy, and I'm joined tonight by 2 panelists, my colleague, 21 News anchor, Derek Steyer, and Buckeye Review publisher, 21 News political panel member on the weekends, a familiar face, Mike McNair, and now to the candidates participating in tonight's event. Incumbent Mayor Jamel Tito Brown, local businessman Ryan Kelly, and Youngstown businessman and City Councilman Julius Oliver. The format of this evening's debate will fall along these lines. Each candidate has 1 minute and 30 seconds for their opening statements. Then we'll be beginning a round of questioning on various topics. The panelists will rotate when asking the questions on each topic. Candidates, you will have 1 minute, I repeat, 1 minute to answer those questions. After each candidate has answered, the candidate can then challenge another candidate's answer. Any rebuttals that take place will be 30 seconds. If time permits, a bonus round will be held where the panelists may ask a question of any of the candidates of their choosing. So if something's not covered, we will get to that. The debate will end with closing statements, each candidate afforded 1 minute and 30 seconds for those closing statements. Each candidate has agreed to stay on for the additional questioning, which will follow this televised event that will continue to stream at 8 o'clock tonight over on the 21 News Facebook page. That conversation will continue and we'll cover what we don't cover here. Opening statements, now that we know the rules, we're going to begin those. Let's get to opening statements in the order, and we have a predetermined order before this debate started. We begin tonight with Ryan Kelly.
Thank you. It's an honor to have the opportunity to speak here tonight, and I'm excited to share my vision for the city of Youngstown. I'm Ryan Kelly. I'm a lifelong resident of this city. The city charter says that the mayor is the CEO of the city. I know that job means dealing with large problems and also making sure the smallest details are covered. Being a CEO means you must be a strong leader and effective manager. You must lead by example and not be afraid to take responsibility, and always remember the buck stops with you. I'm an entrepreneur. I'm not a politician. I've learned that often political experience in this town is about learning how to get reelected rather than be effective. I'm not running for mayor because I need the job or because I'm looking for the next elected office. I'm running for mayor because I want to raise my family here, and I live in this city. I want everybody in the city to have effective leadership, and I want this city to have a chance to thrive today and in the future. I want citizens to know their voices will be heard, and their government is working every day to make their lives better. People in the city of Youngstown have lowered their expectations to meet the level of service. We need to raise the level of service and raise our expectations. We need to raise the expectations for what our government can do, and we need to raise the expectations for what our city can be. We face many challenges, and we cannot wait any longer to solve them.
All right, Mr. Kelly, thank you. Julius Oliver, you're next.
Thank you. Good evening, Youngstown. My name is First Ward Councilman Julius Oliver, and I come before you tonight asking for your vote for mayor of Youngstown, Ohio. I'm a lifelong Youngstown resident, grew up on the south side of Youngstown, lived in Youngstown my whole life except for a short time I spent away serving in the United States Army. I'm also a licensed minister. I'm a husband to a wonderful wife, and since Saturday, I'm now a father of a newborn little boy, Julius R.E.A. Oliver, so I'm super excited about that. Jazz hands for everybody at home. The reason why I come before you wanting to be your mayor is I've spent time in your shoes as a citizen. I've spent time as a representative as city council, so I know both ways of which Youngstown needs help. And I'm here to help Youngstown. I'm here to feed you, Youngstown, since we've been starving for so many years. Starving by regular politicians getting into office and never accomplishing what we need in our neighborhoods, on our streets, and on our blocks. So I'm putting my hat in the ring today to be your mayor of Youngstown, Ohio, because my passion and my heart lies with you. I want to be your mayor, and I want to be that leader that inspires you to do better in the city, because we all have it in us. We just need a leader to bring it out. Thank you.
All right. Mayor Brown.
First of all, I say good evening to everyone. I'm Jamel Tito Brown. I'm your 51st mayor of the city of Youngstown, and I want to take this opportunity to the citizens say thank you for allowing me to lead your city for the last 3 years, 4 months, and about 17 hours, but who's counting? I really appreciate being your leader. I'm educated right here in the city of Youngstown. I hold both my bachelor's and my master's, and definitely my honor degree from Youngstown State. I have 20+ years of community service track record in this community, volunteering on various boards, being active. I'm married to the former Lynette Frost, the best thing I ever did. I have 4 beautiful children and 1 precious granddaughter. 4 years ago, I took this job, and I took the oath, and I said I wouldn't cave to money, power, and politics, and that I would put the citizens of Youngstown first. And for the last 3 years, I've been doing so. When I came in 2018, we had a deficit of $2.2 million. In 2019, $1.4 million. Yet, for the last 4 budget cycles, we've ended in the black, and now we're in the surplus. And I'm asking you to give me 4 more years to continue to move Youngstown forward so we can continue to install integrity in City Hall, and we can make sure that we are having relationships across the nation, the state, and local. Thank you once again. I'm Jamel Tito Brown, your 51st mayor of the city of Youngstown.
All right, thank you for joining us this evening. Our first topic, we start with the fact that the city of Youngstown is at a crossroads tonight. We are deeply entrenched on a number of issues, and they're not limited to blight, unemployment, ongoing crime, where we have seen lives lost at a rate that has not just city leaders upset, but people in the city, mothers and fathers, pleading for it to stop. Now the city has a unique opportunity to work on solving those problems. Access to millions of dollars, a total of $88 million over the next 2 years will be available through the American Rescue Plan. How will the next leader of Youngstown make the most of this moment, and could it bring us closer to solving problems that the city desperately needs to tackle right now? How that money will be spent is our first topic tonight, and we begin with my colleague, 21 News anchor, Derek Steyer.
All right, thank you, Lindsay. My first question is for you, Mayor Brown. Mayor, you've discussed creating a strategic plan to spend the federal money with input from the community, but so far there have been few specifics on who you are seeking input from, how long the process will take, and ultimately who will make the decisions on how this money will be spent. Can you share that with us tonight and tell us what priorities you have for spending this money?
Derek, that's a great question. $88.6 million that we're receiving are American Rescue programming funds from a relief for COVID. Derek, the reason you don't hear much about what the details are because we're still waiting for the Treasury to let go of the specifics of it. But I initially said, once we get this dollar, it's a legacy opportunity for us, Derek. This is going to be a chance in a lifetime for me. I probably will never see this happen in this community again. And we need to make sure that we measure twice and cut once. So a full comprehensive plan must happen. And when I say that, I mean everyone who has a stake in this community, in this valley, needs to be a part of that. That's the mayor, that's city council, that's the citizens, that's our community partners, both private and public. So we want to make sure that we're all there talking about our shared values for this community going forward. This will impact our community going from generations. It won't just be my 4 children, but it'll be my grandchildren as well. So Derek, what I look at as a priority, looking at our core and corridors as being one opportunity to deal with that. I want to make sure that we focus on youth employment. That's another opportunity for us to do that. But I want to focus on some social issues that we face right now, Derek. And that's, we have food insecurities and infant mortality. And I think a central grocery store will be the opportunity right now for that.
All right, Mr. Kelly, you're next.
Yes, I mean, I would start with addressing.
Go ahead. Yes. No, I have a separate question.
Sorry,
you're fine. You're fine. Yeah. No, Mr. Kelly, as a small businessman running for chief executive of the city of Youngstown for the first time, what experience do you have? And give us your thoughts on how you would oversee the expenditure of those $88 million that the city is going to receive in the America Rescue Plan.
Yeah, thank you. So as far as the strategic plan goes, I wouldn't even fill out I wouldn't have my mom sign my petition unless I had a strategic plan. That's how we do every part of my business. If you don't have a strategic plan, you have no idea, your employees as well as yourself, you have no idea where you're at now, where you're going to go, or how you're going to get there. So I think I would not walk into the office without having that strategic plan. So this $88 million will gives you the opportunity to get there quicker and definitely and grow for long term. So you asked me how my experience as a CEO would get me there. I would ask for a needs assessment from every department. I think that's extremely important. I'd take a look at our infrastructure needs. I would want to know that we have the foundation that's going to allow us to handle $88 million being infused into our budget. And I want to make sure that $88 million lasts long term, and that only works if you have a foundation.
Mr. Oliver, as a member of City Council, do you worry at all that the needs of the city as a whole could be compromised if individual council members start lobbying to fund individual projects in their wards?
The answer to that question would be no. I think council works really well together to achieve the goals that Youngstown need. I think right now council's mindset is one that we need a very strategic plan to be able to spend this money. And with City Council and our experience with budgeting and what the residents need, the $88 million would definitely, for each one of us, be focused on the people of Youngstown, focused on improving their quality of life, focused on making sure our corridors look better coming in and out, focused on our neighborhoods and neighborhood infrastructure. And I think that's something that each council person wants in their ward. So with that thinking together as one, I think we can improve Youngstown greatly with $88.6 million.
All right, if anyone has a rebuttal, please raise your hand. Go ahead.
Just a direct response, Derek. You asked me about how long it's going to take and what's going to need to happen. But what people don't realize is how we got here. This didn't happen by coincidence. Mayors across Ohio, mayors across the nation, including myself, we had to actually advocate for this, and we're grateful for President Biden for making sure that he held his word. When I had a one-on-one with him and we talked about, he said, "What do you need, Mayor?" I said, "Don't forget about municipalities like Youngstown, Ohio." And what he told me, Derek, he said, "You will have a seat at the table." So we had to advocate, we had to fight municipalities across the nation because we didn't get it a couple times. And our revenues were still going down and we were being left behind.
Okay.
And just because...
All right, time's up. All right, thank you very much.
How do we know when time's up?
Okay. 30 seconds. Moving on to our next question. I'm sorry? Okay. Any other rebuttals? Sorry about that. Any other rebuttals?
Yeah, I just had a question for the mayor. So are you saying the $88 million was given because of your conversation with President Biden? You think directly that's why we got $88 million, or is it? That's what I mean. You requested, and that's why we received $88 million.
No, I didn't.
Through your conversations, or is there some sort of formula that goes into that?
Go ahead.
Yeah, there's a formula. He's right. There's a formula. So it's our CDBG formula. But he made the pledge because we had a one-on-one that he would not forget, municipalities and cities across the nation. And I just want to help applaud him for his leadership and not forgetting about Youngstown, Ohio.
Thank you.
All right, 30 is up. And I have one rebuttal question for you, Mayor. You mentioned that you would do some transparency in terms of how you're going to spend this money. And you mentioned maybe bringing on a consultant to do that. Can you explain why you believe you need to spend more money to spend this money and why you think that's the best idea to hire someone else to do that? Why wouldn't you handle that in-house? And if you think you have a good plan for this, who would be a good person to be that consultant? Have you reached out to any firms?
Actually, Lindsay, great question. Here's what I'm saying is because when I talk to other mayors across Ohio, this is what they're all talking about doing, because you don't want to commingle those monies with anything else. I think if we come this far with 88.6, we need to make sure that when we're spending these dollars, we don't want to have a clawback years after this that we didn't do it correctly. There's provisions in there. I was on the phone with Senator Brown just the other day with other mayors across Ohio, and those are concerns across Ohio and across the nation. So we're just making sure that when we spend these dollars, they will be appropriated. So I believe that it's small compared to what we need for the big picture.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Okay, moving on to our next question. question. The nation's eyes are on the trial of Minneapolis police officer accused of killing George Floyd. This after Black Lives Matter protests in Youngstown and other cities took place across our country over the summer. We are now seeing tension when it comes to race relations across our country right now, even recently as of yesterday. This is a topic for our next round of questions. Mike, I'll send it to you.
This first question is for Mr. Kelly. There's been some comparison to the summer protests after the killing of George Floyd and many others that compared it to the January 6th storming of the Capitol under the title of Stop the Steal. In your mind, do the protests of the summer compare to January 6th storming of the Capitol, or was it simply a left versus right, or was it a black versus white? Or is there any valid comparison that can be made to the stolen election lie that led to January 6th with the protests of killing of unarmed black people?
No, I do not think there's a direct connection to those two, to January 6th and what happened in the current. I don't think there's a direct connection, to be clear. Yeah.
Okay, so thank you. I just wanted to ask that question. This next question is for Mr. Oliver. White Americans deal with race on an as-needed basis. Black Americans, on the other hand, deal with race every day of their lives. City Council passed a resolution declaring racism a public health crisis as an acknowledgement of the entire public, not just African Americans, are harmed by racism. What does that mean from City Council, and what would City Council do as far as plans to implement, or is it just a statement that it's a public health crisis?
No, public servants passing the legislation that make racism a public health crisis, in my thinking, I can't speak for all of my colleagues, was definitely one of, if you can't get a job because of systemic racism, then that's a problem for the entire community, because your lack of being able to get a job might cause you to start committing crimes and doing other things, and that's multiplied by how many different people are affected by systemic racism. So no, this is systemic racism being a health crisis is a health crisis in every sense of the word, whether it be in unemployment, whether it be healthcare issues, whether it be food desert issues in your community. It's a health crisis in every aspect. And City Council didn't pass that legislation just to let it sit there. That's why we also passed the Crown Act, which was legislation that protected natural hair. So if you're wearing your natural hair, you can't go to school and not be able to graduate because you have dreadlocks, or not be able to, be in a wrestling match because
10 seconds, keep going.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. So yeah, we've already added things to that legislation to be able to beef it up and give it teeth to let our public know that this is real and we're really on top of it.
Thank you. Mayor Brown, this question is for you. A recent survey says that Americans indicate that the fear of the browning of America is what's fueling the backlash against the protests and calls for justice. As a mayor, and you've been public servants for 2 decades, do you feel like, is it fair to say that sometimes the needs of the majority overwhelms the needs of the minority? And how does that fare with respect to good government for everyone?
Mike, I think the question, here's what I would say is good government for everyone. Everyone talks about diversity until there's a position open or employment happening. So as mayor, I lead by example in making sure that my cabinet is diverse with individuals from all walks of life, specifically women. That's where I look at first. When I took this job on, there were not women in leadership roles and opportunities, but also there was not Latina and Latinos in positions as well throughout my cabinet. So we've made sure that we can consistently make sure that minorities are included. That's why I'm asking council for a central purchasing agent so we can talk about minority business, getting procurement from the city of Youngstown, and I think we're going to be more inclusive in the coming years than we ever been in my cabinet and as mayor.
Quick follow-up on that particular point, because sometimes when we talk about diversity, we're talking about, women, Hispanics, disabled, and as representing specifically the black community, sometimes even that puts African Americans in a very small corner.
Sure.
I just want you to comment on that.
Well, I can comment how small it is because my Park and Rec director is African American female. She's one of 18 across the nation of being Park and Rec directors. My chief of staff, African American female. She's probably the first to actually hold that position. Mayor, I'm only the second mayor, but you heard me say I'm the 51st mayor. There's only been 2 African American mayors in this community. Something's wrong with that picture. And we've got to make sure that we continue to educate our young men and women to say that you can be the next mayor of the city of Youngstown. Go get your education, make sure you learn what you need to do, and we need to grow our leaders in the future.
Okay. Do any of the candidates have any rebuttals? If not, we'll move on. Okay. All right, our next question is focused on crime. Crime impacts virtually every aspect of a citizen's life. The city has recently experienced a surge in crime, with the mayor and the police chief calling for calm, pleading for people in Youngstown to stop the violence and end what they're calling street justice. 2 homicides within a span of less than 24 hours prompted the city to use saturation patrols and boost a law enforcement presence within the city. The violence did not stop there. On Easter Sunday, 1 man was killed. 2 others were wounded when gunfire broke out inside of a nightclub in the city. The mayor stressing the violence is linked to a small group of known individuals. Derek is now going to lead this round of questioning.
All right, thank you, Lindsay. My first question is for you, Councilman Oliver. You've been a councilman since 2016. During that time, what ideas have you put forth to reduce the crime problem in the city, and how would your efforts change if elected mayor?
One of the biggest things I put forth is a project to try to change an entire neighborhood. It was 2 projects, as a matter of fact. It was bringing back Southfield House and making it a multi-purpose center for the entire community, basketball, nonprofits, churches, what have you, and using that facility to restore an entire neighborhood, thereby taking people's minds off of their everyday troubles and situations that they get into. Because what a lot of people don't understand is, when people get into crime or situations dealing with crime, it's not a bunch of different factors that could really affect your decision at the time that you're making that decision. So saturation patrols, all of that really doesn't matter at the time you're making your decision to commit that crime. What really matters is you having a sense or understanding of who you are to know that you don't have to commit this crime. And that's going to take a culture shift throughout the entire city. So that's why I introduced the News Block program to bring our young men into entrepreneurs. And what I would do with that program, is that a timer?
Oliver, almost.
Okay. What I would do with that program with News Block is basically you take first-time drug offenders that have just getting caught as a teenager, and instead of putting them in jail, you put them into an entrepreneurship program.
All right, time is up.
Changing their, okay, sorry.
That's right. Thank you. Mayor Brown, while violent crime in the city is down from a decade ago, the rate of murders, robbery, and assault have remained largely flat and are several times greater at the state and national levels. Has the city stalled in its efforts to fight violent crime, and is Youngstown a safe place to live?
First of all, I say if you look at the national statistics, violent crime is up across the nation. But I think we've got to be more proactive. And I think with the hiring of Chief Davis and some of his ideas, it was not necessarily one idea. It was multiple ideas that he had in his mind of what he wanted to do. That's why I think it's important for this $800,000 that we have for COPS grants, where we can put more community police out on the street. We want to make sure our community police are out in the community learning and knowing one another, not when there's just a crime. I want them to go there when it's not a crime. I want to make sure when we have this Respect Basketball League, they're out there just not in uniform, but getting a chance to know the young men and women. I want to make sure that when they're out there with their body cameras, they're not just going by to see if somebody's committed a crime. They're stopping by to see how Miss Johnson's doing up on West Warren. So those are some of the things that we need to focus on. But we've got to make sure, and I say this time and time again, and listen to me clear, we must make sure it's not just the mayor's issue, it's not city council's issues, the police issues, it's a community issue. We need people to, when you see something, say something. If you know something, you need to explain and tell us how to help. We need the community all hands on deck with this one.
Would you do anything differently in the next 4 years as opposed to what's taken place the last 3.5 years when these levels have remained pretty flat?
You know, I think we continue to be creative and look at best practice across the nation. We just reinstituted hotspot cards across the city where individuals can be anonymous and put information out to let it happen. But I also think it's going to take a culture of our young men and women who want to be police officers in this community. I think you start with them earlier, Derek. When we talked about intervention and prevention, intervention needs to happen earlier. We need to make sure they know the police department is a great place of professionals to work at, and I would love to see us have an academy for police cadets.
All right, thank you, Mayor Brown. Mr. Kelly, you have police officers in your family, but no experience in working with citizens and police to develop crime prevention policies. How would you overcome that to be an effective mayor in dealing with this issue?
Well, again, you spoke to my experience, my relationship, my family. I watched my whole life. I am in a police family. I don't hide from that. That doesn't make me any different from, you know, how I live my life, but it has shown me that to be effective in hide known crimes, known areas of high criminal activity, you have to address them. I disagree with saturation patrol not being effective. I think police has to be visible. I think you could attack these known areas of high criminal activity by attacking neutral criminal activities such as traffic violations. Because if you're policing traffic violations, there's two colors that matter, and it's red and green. Okay? And when it comes down to it, when you're in these areas, we had a broad daylight shooting today, and you know, I pray that the victim is doing okay, but this is scary, and parents want to know their kids can go out and play. People want to know they can go to the store and be safe. So when you ask me how do I expect it, I will bring in a police chief, or I will talk with, as soon as I hear Chief Davis's plan and Mayor Brown's plan, when it's my administration, I could decide whether or not it's effective, but I haven't heard that plan yet in detail. So at that time, again, we are going to be proactive with policing, and you will see police in your neighborhood.
Time is up, and any rebuttals, we now begin those. Those are 30 seconds. Julius, you may go.
Yeah, I just want to rebut what Mr. Kelly said. Look, anybody that's going to convince you that policing away crime is the answer, it's not the answer. You're never going to be able to police away crime. Crime can happen right in front of a bunch of police officers. What you have to do is change the mentality and the culture. And the mentality and the culture of our entire city needs to change. And that's going to take instituting programs and looking into different things that reduce violence, along with policing and increase police presence, but not just one.
Mayor Brown, you may respond.
Every citizen should feel safe no matter where they live, no matter what their zip code, not their area code, they should feel safe. One of the things that we've been working on, and we're seeing a great increase and improvement, is our SERVE program. We need to make sure that we continue to try to increase our SERVE program, where we're meeting those young men and women at an early age at a different time, so that we can make sure that they are not looking for a life of crime. But I talked earlier about the $88.6 million when we talked about a youth employment program. The best thing I learned was how to work hard in the summertime, and that helps young men and women, keep them off the streets, but it teaches them hard work and ethics, and I think that's another opportunity that we need to make sure we use that $88.6 million for.
Mr. Kelly, do you have a rebuttal?
Yeah, I do. Okay. I'm all for addressing the long-term causes of crime. I think it's actually not just talking about programs, implementing them, stopping that cycle. I'm all for it. Through summer employment, I personally worked in the park department, so I know the things that the end result of those programs are fantastic, but we have an issue right now that we have to address. And again, this is what I'm hearing when I'm out knocking on doors, is that people want to feel safe, they want their kids to go out and play, and we're not doing a good enough job addressing it.
Do you have anything? Okay, I have a question I'll pose to the mayor. You were mentioning summer programs and summer time. I reached out to the U.S. Marshal's office, and you had mentioned, you and the chief, that you reached out to ATF and their office in the wake of the Easter shootings and the shootings before then, the 24-hour span, all of the violence you were having. And they say they do have a program with U.S. Marshals down here in Youngstown, but they mentioned that you have not reached out for a summer program. They could do a program like a summer arrest program, they said. Is that something that your office would consider, and is that something that you might discuss in the wake of the fact that we've had violence, not only just today, we had violence this weekend. It appears to be ongoing, and we don't see any end anytime soon.
But the question was, would I accept that program? Yes, we would. Pete Elliott was in our office. So anytime that you can help the citizens of Youngstown and you can help our children, our babies in this community, it's a plus. I think you asked me on a Sunday morning show, you said, well, what's next, Mayor? We have to keep adding layers to that. But the problem with that is you're going to continue to add layers to just my auntie or my grandmother driving to church. And I don't want to make sure that we're putting them in a vice, but I want to make sure they're safe. So it's a delicate balance. We have to make sure. And we know, and I say that, and I say it publicly, we know that there's a small faction of young men and women who are out there who are causing these issues. And we just need the community to tell and help us get there.
Okay. We're going to move on now to our next question. All right, citizens review is what we're going to be talking about next. The relationship between law enforcement and minority communities has been the center of protests, as I mentioned earlier on in this program, within the last year. And here at home, a new layer of transparency could be added. The city chief and city safety committee, they want to see the creation of what's called a citizen review board, which would review complaints made against the city police department. This is not uncommon to something you see in other cities like Cleveland or Warren. Mike McNair, I'm going to have you begin this line of questioning.
We'll start with Mayor Brown. You are supporting the creation of a Citizens Review Board. In other states where this has happened, the board has been given investigative or subpoena powers. Would you support giving the Youngstown Citizen Review Board those same powers?
Mr. Mayor, I think that's an opportunity that we should look at. I don't know much about the subpoena power, but if that's going to make the Citizen Review Board more effective, I'm open to that. But I think the one thing I want you to hear clearly, that a Citizen Review Board needs to have everyone involved. It can't just have the mayor, city council. It needs to have the police union, and the citizens involved in it as well. I stopped by roll call to talk to the men and women of Youngstown Police Department, which they are professionals. You hear the national narrative, but our local narrative, that our men and women of our police department are shining examples of what a police department looks like. But I talked to them about the Citizen Review Board, and the question and the answer they gave me is that they just wanted to have an input and be involved. So I'm open to that. I look forward to the Citizen Review Board. But I've talked to Toledo, I've talked to Columbus, and asked the other mayors, and they say there's growing pains with this as well early on. But they say once you get started and you have everyone's input, it can be effective.
Mr. Kelly, do you support Citizens Review Board? And how would you keep it safe from outside pressure?
I support a Citizens Review Board only if we had a Citizens Police Academy, they understood the training, there was multiple layers, and until then, that would be so far down the road, because I believe this would be a path to more division and actually causing a separation. Because I do agree, I think in our city, we have a good relationship with the police. The police department has a good relationship with the community. I do believe, I agree with Mayor Brown on that, but I think that the conversations that we're having on a national level, although they are extremely important, and I 100% agree they need to be had, I do believe that we cannot take any path that leads to more division between, again, connecting the community and police.
So, Mr. Oliver, as councilman, do you support creation of a Citizens Review Board? And what would you do to ensure that it would not be subject to pressure from outside influences?
Absolutely, I would support it. It's something we're basically working on right now within City Council, the Safety Committee. I don't think it causes division to have a Citizens Review Board. I don't think it's considered division to check anyone on behavior that may be wrong or affecting the community in a wrong way. So I don't think it causes division. I think what it does is it brings a coming together, and it says, okay, this is what we think you're doing wrong, and this is what we would like you to do right. I would support a Citizens Review Committee even when it comes to hiring practices, when it comes to police officers, vetting them out ahead of time. So the way I would keep them safe from outside pressure is by actively reviewing citizens on that board to make sure that they don't have any certain affiliations, that they're actual citizens that can come in and give their wholehearted, genuine opinions.
Okay. All right, now we're going to move on to rebuttals. We have 30 seconds for these. Again, Kelly, you raised your hand. You may go first.
Yeah, to clarify on the division, Councilman Oliver, if somebody walked into your business and told you how to wash a car and detail a car, you'd be pretty upset about it. And I think that that's where the potential division could be caused. I mean, where they're already feeling national pressure when you're reading the narratives, that regardless of how, this is, again, when you're out talking to different police officers and you're just seeing there's a little division being created because there's a national narrative. They don't feel a support from the administration or council, and so therefore, that's where I feel, I don't disagree with you on there can be communication on where we may be lacking. Where I disagree is if you're talking about implementing a review board, it's going to tell me, a person who's trained, how to do my job. That's where we have issue.
Time's up. Go ahead, Julie Sullivan.
I think everybody has an opportunity to learn. If someone walked into my detail shop and told me how to detail a car, I would take what was good and I would leave what was bad behind. I would improve my business off of what they said, and I think it's the same thing our police departments can do, is improve the way they police off of what the citizens are saying. It's an opportunity to learn.
Okay, Mayor Brown.
I'll just say that in 2021, we will have body cams for our police officers. I think that's a further opportunity to be transparent. Most of the police officers I talked to, they really want the body cameras, because there was an incident one night and he said, Mayor, if I'd have had my body camera on, you would have saw what I had to deal with over last night. So in 2021, we'll have body cameras. I think some of those behaviors that may be alleged out there may not be actually complaints.
Okay, and that segues into our next question for this evening in terms of policing within our community. The department recently adopted that new bias-free policy, with the new chief saying, quote, "We are going to take this seriously." Our question about bias-free policing comes from Derek Steyer.
All right, my first question is for Mr. Kelly. The police department has this new bias-free policing policy that states officers who violate it will be disciplined in accordance with their existing collective bargaining agreement. Some African-American leaders are taking a wait-and-see attitude on whether it will be effective. What do you think?
I believe that it has to be a standard that we have equality in policing. So any program or any discussion we have, yes, there has to be a standard when it comes to that. If I run a stop sign, Mayor Brown runs a stop sign, Councilman Oliver runs a stop sign, we all get pulled over because you can't run a stop sign. As far as it comes to, again, if you break the law or you commit a crime or you have an issue, you have to be policed. You have to be disciplined in any way. So yes, I mean, when you talk about the unbiased policing program, or excuse me, how I feel on that aspect is completely, I don't want to take any time away from these police officers having to do their job in policing and having them interacting with the community. So as long as we don't add any further stop and where they're hesitating to do anything, they're out policing, they're out connecting with the community, I think that's the most important.
Follow-up, would you say that there's been biased policing here?
Not that I'm aware of, but I mean, if there is, I would look into it, I would call for a review, and I would call for discipline just any way that we would. We have a protocol, if you do not follow that protocol, you'll be disciplined like anybody else.
That leads into my question with Councilman Oliver. Councilman, some African-American residents have told us that they have been stopped in the city for driving while black. Against that backdrop, do you think that this anti-bias policy goes far enough to fix the long-standing trust problems between the department and the minority community?
Absolutely. I think it's a start, and I think it's something we can build on. In order to fix the situation, period, you're going to need a culture shift even within Youngstown City Police Department. Just to be clear, I honor and respect and have the utmost respect for our police and fire safety forces together. But there are individuals that have done wrong in other places, and even here, that correction needs to be applied. So absolutely, I think it's a great start, and I think it's a great springboard to build off of.
Mayor Brown, the contract for the police patrol union is up in November. Do you believe that the new bias-free policing policy should be specifically included in that next contract? And what disciplinary measures do you think the new contract should contain for officers who violate that policy? Should some violations warrant immediate termination or even suspension?
Derek, I'll start with the last. As it relates to discipline, I think discipline should be that of the issue. you know, whatever, I'm not saying all issues are rise to the same occasion, but I believe that we should have these actual pieces in our union contract so that if I'm not the mayor or the next police chief's not there, that it's in there. It's an institutional piece. I think we're talking long term. We're not just talking this year, we're talking years to come. So we want to make sure this is a long-term opportunity, at least for the next contract or contracts to go after that. I think this is going to be an opportunity to build trust. We've talked about trust from the community, but I think there's going to be an opportunity to build trust with the citizens, but also with the officers who work well in the Youngstown Police Department.
All right, we're moving on to rebuttals. If any of you have a rebuttal, you get 30 seconds to do that. Go right ahead. Anyone? Kelly, go ahead.
Again, just to add to something I said earlier, when it comes to the bias, again, I'll give you a scenario and something that I would have a concern with. In certain areas, in certain beats, in certain wards, we may have a 80, 90% minority-led ward. So if I'm a police officer and I pull over, not every 9 out of 10 individuals within that ward in that demographic may be minority, they may be white. Is that will that slow my policing? Well, I have to question whether I can actually, that's what I'm confused if you can explain. Do you under the thought process behind I'm asking you with the bias-free policing, because for me, equality in policing should be a standard, and that comes from leadership, and that comes from, that's all the way down in clear-cut standard from your police chief, from your mayor, from your police chief all the way down.
If I could, just really, I think what you're not seeing is that you've never had to deal with that. You know, my 31-year-old and my 11-year-old, I'm still having the same conversations with them as how to act when police pull you over. Great young men and women that I know have been pulled over because of their skin tone or what kind of car they're driving. Sometimes they don't get a break like others. But you talk about the neighborhoods. If you don't live in those neighborhoods, you don't feel that pressure. So there's an uncharted conversation for those who've never had to live in the skin that I'm living in. And it pains me that we would have to be at this point in 2021, but we're here. That's why I want to make sure the professionals who are out there and law enforcement are saying we're going to do this the right way for everybody. And it's equality across the board, and it's going to come with some great training, and it's going to come with the community being involved in that training as well to make sure that when Ryan has that question, someone can answer it for him when he's out doing his beat.
Thank you. Time's up. Go ahead, Julius.
I just want to add to that. I agree with what Mayor Brown said, but I think in order to be an effective mayor in a city like Youngstown, Ohio, you would have to have a better understanding of the people and the situations that they deal with on a daily basis in the city. So,
I mean, what pains me is that we have couches can't go by windows, they got to go by walls because we're afraid of bullets coming through, or we have mothers that are still crying on TV because where there's loss of life. That stuff pains me. I haven't experienced that. I mean, and I'll be the first to say it, and again, that's a standard. There's an equality standard across the board, but we have that's driven through leadership. That's driven through, you can have a clear, hey, if this is done, then, but you can't have a quota system looking all the way down. Yeah, it's clear. It has to be clear cut that we're not allowing that, but are we communicating with our police officers to make sure that across the board, we're not enacting different ideas or legislation that's going to prohibit them from policing.
Is that a question?
Stopping these issues for either.
Can you ask that last part again?
Yeah. So I want to make sure that we're not prohibited. Policing bias should be a standard that there should be equality in policing, but are the officers that are actually policing these beats, are they brought in and asking their input on this? All of them? Are they brought in?
I don't know how the legislation was put together, but what I would basically say is, with the current situation and climate in our country, and us not having those huge issues here in Youngstown, and we want to be able to keep it that way, you can't say, well, I want to allow the police to continue doing their job the way they've been doing it at the detriment of the community, just so we cannot skew the lines when it comes to policing. Is that what you're saying?
No, what I'm saying is I think a lot of this, there's a disconnect between administration, council, and the police department. And I don't believe that we're being clear in what our expectations are of these bias and these. I just think that they feel like they can't police.
Okay. We're going to move on to, and this may segue, so give me one moment here. We're going to move on to our next question. Leadership styles guide people in their roles as leaders. And they give insight into how leaders are going to perform on their job, what skills they think are important. We have a question tonight about the importance of leadership skills, and I'll go to Mike McNair because this topic is going to continue here.
Sure. So the issues facing the nation, this is for Mr. Oliver first, seem to hit cities first. And because of the vast majority of Ohioans, probably 70%, live in cities. So mayors have, and their leadership is very important. My question is about your leadership development. Who is in your corner? Who do you like? Who do you want to model yourself after as far as a leader? Have you seen leaders, known leaders in the past or the present that you admire, that you want to model your leadership style after?
Is that just like a one-word answer, like one person, or?
Perhaps.
I would say my leadership model comes from a few different people. My uncle, Bishop Roderick Hennings, who comes from Youngstown, but I would say the most would be my drill sergeants in the United States Army, because what they did is they showed us leadership, but they didn't just tell us what to do. They showed us what to do, and they showed us that we could achieve it even better than them. And that's the type of leadership style I bring to the city, is leadership that encourages you and inspires you to do better, to pull everything out of yourself and live out your full potential. And that's my leadership style.
Okay. Mayor Brown, I know you network with people all over the country and mayors from all over Ohio. Similar question to you. We grow by the people we meet and the conversations we have and the books that we read. Can you name a leader, a leadership style, or person, past, present, future, history, that you admire or would like to model yourself after?
Actually, I was in Columbus, Ohio, and I stopped at a bookstore and I saw a book. It said Basic Brown by Willie Brown. Willie Brown was the former mayor of San Francisco, and it was on sale. And the reason I bought it, I'll be honest, because it said Basic Brown, and I picked it up because of the name. Mm-hmm. I started reading it, and he talked about how you conduct yourself as a mayor, and it was through how you dress, how you articulate yourself, and how you treat people. He says a lot of times you don't have to tear anyone down to build yourself up. He says people will see who you are. And I go back to my football days, and I learned that it's not me or I in football, it's we. And I look at how we're dealing with leadership across the nation, and it's got to be us. It's got to be we're all in this together. But the leader I would go with Willie Brown, Basic Brown, the former mayor of San Francisco.
Thank you. Mr. Kelly, similar question for you. And I like it when you were talking in the last segment about, these treatments should be equal, right? So I would like to ask you, in your preparation in a bid for mayor, have there been leaders that you have admired, decisions that have been made that you aspire to be like when you bring your skill set to the mayor's office?
Yeah, I decided that I wanted to run for mayor, and it became a dream April 9, 2005. I was at the Union Baptist Candidates Forum, and a guy who's like a second grandfather to me, Bob Bush, he brought me, again, he asked, I told him I wanted to be the mayor. At watching that, there was just so much energy, and I loved everything about it. I love the city, and I love watching the whole conversation. So he's really a mentor to me from a governmental side of it. I think I watched from that moment. I then worked on Jay Williams' campaign, and I picked up little things along the way. I've been involved in different political campaigns, and what's clear to me is if you want to be a great mayor, you have to be a great leader and a great manager. And you have to lead by example. You have to inspire confidence in your workers. You have to empower your workers to make decisions, to be the best they possibly can. And you have to be clear, and you have to be willing to take responsibility. And again, the biggest thing that I've seen is that you have to be able to take risk and not fear not being reelected. You need to be able to do what's right for the right reasons.
Okay. Any rebuttals? No? I think so. All right, well, now we are going to move on to our closing statements. We ran out of time getting deep into these local issues that, of course, impact a lot of folks living here and in the surrounding communities of Youngstown and the Valley. Each candidate, you will receive 1 minute and 30 seconds for your closing statements. The order was predetermined, so we begin with Mr. Kelly.
Thank you. I'd like to thank WFMJ for hosting this debate. I'd like to thank Mayor Brown, Councilman Oliver. While we are opponents in this election, I know that we all do care about the city equally. And with that being said, I think we've heard some different visions on how we can achieve a brighter future for Youngstown. I said it earlier tonight, we are at a time where, and I think I want to be clear, I've been involved in elections. It's been my dream since 2005. I've also heard the similar questions asked since 2005, which tells me that we haven't changed these things. And I think it's clear that although we have many challenges, we are past due on addressing those issues. I'm running for mayor because I want to make the city safer. I want to improve the quality of life for the citizens. I want to bring the city government to the 21st century. I want to build partnerships that will help us grow jobs in the future. And I want to make sure we take every single opportunity we can to move Youngstown forward. Tonight, I just want to be clear. I want to thank everybody for the opportunity. And again, I want to make sure that my dream is fulfilled, that every neighborhood in the city, all 34 square miles, will be involved in moving Youngstown forward. Thank you.
Mayor Brown?
Once again, I want to thank everyone for having me here tonight. Once again, I want to thank the voters of Youngstown, Ohio, for having a confidence in me to be your 51st mayor of the city of Youngstown. Just recently, the Vindicator endorsed me in the editorial board, and I read a lot of things that I always agreed upon. The one thing they said, and it stands true, we cannot afford to change leadership in the middle of a global pandemic. We cannot afford to change leadership, and we're about to receive a legacy opportunity. I've been leading this community for the first 3 years. The first 2, we had to fix some things from past administration, and the third one, we were in a global pandemic. And I was the first with our team. We were the first to put together a COVID-19 team that made sure that our people were safe in this community, that the most vulnerable were taken care of. So during this time, for my 3 years, we've been leading. 5 words describe a mayor. Find a problem, you solve it. When problems come up, we solve them. And we're coming through this global pandemic not just to survive, but we must thrive. I want to make sure together we can turn around the ills of the past and look for a brighter future and a promise for tomorrow. We cannot afford to go back. We must continue to look to our future and make an impact on the generations for Camille, Clarissa, Quentin, and Ariana. Those are my children. So the future of Youngstown depends on you and your vote. May 4th, please go vote Jamel Tito Brown, and thank you.
Mr. Oliver.
Thank you. Youngstown, my name is Julius Oliver, and I'm seeking your vote in May to be the next mayor of Youngstown, Ohio. And I want you to ask yourself some questions. For decades, administration after administration, have you been able to see a difference in your neighborhood, on your block, on your street? Have you been able to see a difference in your schools? Have you been able to see a difference in your city parks? Have you been able to see a difference in City Hall? To me, the answer is no. We get the same type of politics that get into office year after year, decade after decade. They make us promises, they get their office, and then they turn their backs on us. We don't have time to be fulfilling anybody's dream or be giving anybody a second shot on a dream. We got a city that has to go up. It has to move upward and onward, and I'm here to take us there. I've sat in the same situations you've sat in, wondering why. I've sat at home watching my TV at the news, wondering why there's another murder or another crime committed. I've seen the school reports year after year, and it's time to have a leader that's going to get into office and do something different and put the people of Youngstown at the forefront, to put the people of Youngstown first and do what it is that you need on your street, on your block, and in your neighborhood. So I'm asking you to elect me, Julius Oliver, mayor, for leadership that inspires and leadership that improves. Thank you.
All right, we're just going to squeeze in a little bit of a bonus round here. We found some extra time in the back. So, Derek, I'm going to start with you.
Mike,
Mike?
yep.
Yeah, Derek, we're going to go with you first.
Okay, so Let's talk about the school system. You just mentioned it, Mr. Oliver, and House Bill 70 has created the Youngstown plan, and we have the dubious distinction of being one of the few cities to be taken over by the state, but whether we're taken over by the state or not, our scores are low, and the city has passed a levy for the school district, and yet the school board members have no voice. Are you in favor of undoing House Bill 70 to return local control to the citizens, or do you have a feeling about that whole Youngstown plan?
Oh, yeah, absolutely, I'm in favor of overturning House Bill 70 and turning it back over to the voters with the school board. The only issue is you have to have a school board that's in place that's going to be able to make the appropriate decisions for our children, and that currently isn't the case. My thinking is we need to do everything possible, no matter what the situation is, whether it be the school board or whether it be the CEO, to make sure that our students are getting the best education possible. And that's going to require all kinds of wraparound services and programs to be able to put in them what they may not be getting in the education system.
Derek, a quick question for one of the
Mr.
candidates.
Kelly, you brought up quality of life to improve it. How would you describe the quality of life in the city of Youngstown right now, and what would you do, what steps would you take to increase it?
We need clean, quality, affordable housing. That will improve quality of life. We need to make sure that we have clear neighborhoods. We need to ensure that we have $88 million. We need to be creative to make sure that we build a foundation that will allow us to thrive. You do that by looking at the things that somebody would look at when they Google Youngstown if they're moving here. How are our schools? So we do need to get involved in the schools, at least be involved. Anything that's Youngstown, anything that's in Youngstown, we need to be involved to make sure that things are moving forward, because again, we want to sell our city. Are we addressing crime? Are we addressing, what are our costs? What's our cost of living here? Everything that goes into it. So to improve that quality of life, it's the simple things.
All right, Mr. Kelly, I hate to interrupt you. We're out of time. We're going to continue this conversation. Save your thought there for the bonus round that's on our streaming coverage on our 21 News Facebook page. Again, thank you to the candidates for joining us tonight. Thank you for the wonderful hospitality here from Stamba Auditorium. Get out and vote. The primary is May 4th. Again, thank you so much for joining us this evening. This concludes our 2021 decision coverage here for 21 WFMJ. It was a pleasure being with you this evening. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Of an ambulance service. I want to make sure that we have a connection, that the people feel confident in their safety services, and that we have a connection that they're ready to better serve the community. I want to make sure that there's a connection with every councilman in every ward and every neighborhood group. Again, I want to make sure that that the citizens have a better connection with City Hall, and that all those things will improve the quality of life in the city.
We're going to move on to another question. Last year, 21 News reported the lack of ambulance service was sufficient enough to cover the needs of our city. One teen involved in a call had fallen into a frozen pond with no ambulance to transport him after the firefighters pulled him out of the water. Fast forward to this year, just last month, a 4-year-old boy was shot in Youngstown, and again, no ambulance in the city was available to respond. An ambulance company from another jurisdiction had to call in to help, and they arrived to assist. And this is an issue that has been going on for years in the city. It's no secret the union has stepped in on this, and the topic is the round, part of the round of our next questions. I'll go to Derek.
All right, thank you, Lindsay. Mr. Oliver, in September of 2018, the local firefighters union presented the city with a 156-page proposal that would integrate EMS services back into the city after 29 years. The price tag then would run more than $2 million. Did you have the opportunity to review that proposal as a member of council, and are you willing to go to the voters and ask for a tax levy to fund an ambulance service, or do you support using funds from the America Rescue Plan to create one?
Absolutely, I support it, and I think you could do both. I think we could leverage some of those dollars to get more dollars from grants to be able to build an even better EMS service. I think the situation you run into is one that one of my colleagues brought up is it very beneficial for our fire safety forces to be able to integrate EMS, given that a lot of our residents don't carry the insurance to be able to cover it. So you could find yourself putting yourself into a greater hole or evening out when it comes to EMS. But absolutely, as far as having an EMS service for the safety of our community, I think it's something that should happen, and I think it's something that will happen.
Mayor Brown, in 2018, you're quoted in one of our news stories about this ambulance issue as saying that you, quote, have talked to Chief Finley and he's putting together a team to look at how do we continue making sure that we have service for when calls are needed, when it's necessary for the citizens, end quote. Can you tell us who is on that team and what they've done to address this ambulance service issue to date?
So, Derek, what we had the union that was at the table. Chief Finley was at the table. We had YSU at the table, as well as the local ambulance company at the table. And we've met several times at YSU. Unfortunately, the communication broke down about it's coming about who's going to lead the charge. That was the issue. You probably can quote a quote with the union president, and we were trying to have conversations and mediate the conversation of what that looked like. Their issue was really about having the firefighters do first responder. And now I think we have the $2 million. I think there's no price tag for the safety of the citizens of Youngstown. And the one thing, I ran into a firefighter and he said, Mayor, here's what we need to do with some of that money. I mean, along with everyone else to tell you what to do with the money. He said, for ambulance would be a great opportunity for the city of Youngstown. I told him, I totally agree. So I'm looking forward to a follow-up conversation now that we have the ARP money and to see what that looks like. But we're going to need to get more firefighters and firemen on the job so that we can make sure the citizens are safe no matter where you call them for ambulance service.
You're the mayor of the city, you're the CEO of this city. Shouldn't you take charge of this situation?
Well, the chief understands, and I'm going to let him do what he needs to happen. But I am at the table. I'm not just sending him in there. I'm at the table as well. I've had numerous conversations. I've even looked at programs to how to get more ambulance drivers, how we can earn while you learn. So I've been at the table making these conversations happen. So I will be at the table when we start talking about the ambulance service as well.
All right. Mr. Kelly, would you be willing to put an ambulance tax levy on the ballot?
I don't think you need to put an ambulance tax levy on the ballot to fund it, and I think that the time for talk was gone the moment we didn't have ambulance. Our response time is affecting the lives and a potential lost life in a low response time, or we had to put a police officer or a firefighter had to put a child or my grandfather or somebody in the back of a police vehicle or a fire truck to get them to the hospital. That is a basic need that we have in our city. That's an expectation. I want to know that if we call 911, that they're going to show up here today. That's also a further concern when we start talking about body cameras and issues of racism. I think I worry about those issues as far as we are allowing a private company to make a decision on whether they want to go into a high crime neighborhood or whether they're going to go to on the west side or different sides of town. Where's the oversight in that? So I would not allow, given how important diversity is to our city, I would not allow a private company, anybody outside of me, to make a decision that affects the lives, that important that affects the lives of the citizens in Youngstown.
All right, anyone have any rebuttals?
Yeah,
ahead.
So what would you do if would you say that we need an ambulance service, or would you say as the private company you would tell them here's how things go? First of all, make sure you understand that this is the industry that they do and as police. So what would you do to make them accountable? Because this is not, you said it, it's not.
Let me finish.
I just want to
Yes, sir.
Give you a better question. This is not a new issue. This has been going on as long as we can all remember it. It goes back prior to Tito Brown, but it's an issue. We want to make sure the citizens are safe. So just a question.
Yeah, I mean, I would take, again, 5 words. Issues aren't solved by talking, and I'm going to, it's an issue. It needs solved. It was an issue. It's been an issue for 4 or 5 years now. It's a different service. We had multiple different EMS services in our city, and now it's just the call volume. Again, you said there's an insurance issue. There likely is an issue, but the bigger issue is this is something that's affecting the lives of residents in our city. It's not a question. We have $88 million. If we can use it, we have to use it, and we don't need to use it because there was a plan in place, as you said, in 2018 to fund that and have it implemented. So.
I guess the funding, that's the issue. You're saying this, but how would you have it happen?
It's revenue driven. I mean, again, there's grants available.
Yeah, it's the startup. I think everyone has it's so simple, but there's a startup cost for each one of these ambulances, and that's where the startup cost and that money has to happen. So that's where it sounds good once you get the ambulance running. I think Councilman Oliver hit it right on the head when he says, but then you have to be able to bill for that. And if they're not billable hours, it's got to be a revenue operational piece for the citizen of Youngstown. And I've talked to mayors across the city and other states, and they tell me, Mayor, be careful when you get in that business because it's not a profit making. All I want to make sure is that it's a life-saving business as well.
Just one rebuttal for
Go
me.
ahead.
You would also have to be able to deal with the issue going on between administration and the unions and the fire department when it comes to starting the EMS. So it's not like something that we could have just been like, and it's happening because there's a lot bigger issues.
Well, again, I mean, I'd have to just see, is there a cost differential analysis that's done that tells us whether we're gonna do this because AMR or whoever we're contracting with, this is a better path to, again, save lives and most effective because, again, we're not talking about loss of revenue or dollars, we're talking about loss of life, as you said, and that's most important. Yeah. So it's find the money, find it through grants, find it. If we had a department that could do that, we'd write those grants that way. So.
Okay. We're going to move on to our next question. Youngstown has been described as a food desert with very few options for affordable, fresh, quality food year-round. Like other nearby urban cities, it's difficult to find and retain reliable and affordable grocery stores and options for people that are living in the city, and that does impact the quality of life. Let's go to Mike for this round of questioning.
Mr. Kelly, as a business owner, what obstacles do you see in the way of attracting a grocery store to Youngstown, and what can be done to remove them?
So I think a major obstacle is if you put a grocery store, you have to find where to put it. And if you put it there, again, I was talking to somebody on Midlothian the other day. I said if you put a grocery store right on Southern Boulevard there, the majority of that neighborhood would probably still go to Walmart or would still go to, Rowley Brothers down there. So we have to find something. You'd have to do a market research study to see what best fits the needs of the residents. They obviously need a grocery store that they have needs. So let's find their needs. Let's address the needs. Let's plan. Let's build it. Let's try it. Let's learn from it. And then if it doesn't work, we'll repeat the process. But again, there is a need for a grocery store. There is a need for some sort of central food hub. There was a Northeast Ohio food analysis study done nationally in 2014, and it had a pretty good cycle, and how wholesalers can fund different central grocery hubs. I know that Mayor Brown's talking about it. I mean, central food locations and warehouses, and I agree with it, but the time for talk is gone. We have to do these things. These issues were around in 17, they were around in 14, they're around in 21. We have to start putting these plans in action.
Mayor Brown, in 2018, you visited Toledo to look at how that city dealt with food deserts and that problem. At that time, you said you were going to formulate a strategic plan for doing something. So it's now 2021. I know 2020 has been the year that we want to forget, but we've mentioned it, and it's time that we're going to get some federal money. What do you think is the next step for the food desert issue that's been on the table for quite some time?
It's been on the table for quite some time, Mike, but some of the things you talked about that we have a food policy committee. One of the things we've brought in is Retail Strategies, a national organization Their job is to actually find retailers for companies and communities like Youngstown, Ohio. So we've initiated that. But also we made sure that we start talking to those who were most affected by this, those with infant mortality issues. We've got one of the highest infant mortality issues there. So we brought community organizations on to make sure that when we're making these conversations, we know that they're going to be addressing those needs for those individuals. I talked to the mayor in Dayton, Nan Whaley, and they just started. 4 years later, they were able to get a grocery store going, and they had a food desert, infant mortality, lead issues. And I say, Nan, what was the driving force? She said there was two things. She said we had private investment, but there was a nonprofit organization who actually drove the process. So we're going to need some of the philanthropic organizations to be engaged, but we're going to need the nonprofits to kind of drive this organizational piece to make sure the central grocery store happens for us. So there's many pieces that are happening, and I look forward to it happening soon.
Mr. Oliver, Councilman Oliver, what are your thoughts about how to attract quality, low-cost groceries to the city?
I'm always in favor of dealing with entrepreneurs, local people here. Our citizens know what we need. Our citizens know what to grow. Our citizens know what we want in our stores. I think we can go to any city, near or far, find a co-op, ask them how they did it, ask them to come back to Youngstown and show us how to do it. And we already have the nonprofits here present that's ready to go. We already have entrepreneurs that's ready to go. I have 2 entrepreneurs that tried to put a grocery store in the closed CVS building just months ago. So there are people on board that's ready to do it. It's just a matter of our city being able to incentivize, being able to help these entrepreneurs get off the ground and be like, you know, hey, here's a helping hand. We're going to help you get this grocery store up and running because this is something our city needs.
Okay, we're going to move on now to rebuttals. Does anyone have a rebuttal? Follow-up question? Okay, I do, so I'm going to jump in, and my question is posed at Mayor Brown. Mayor, do you have any letters of intent, or what was your last correspondence with the consulting company that was helping you look at the grocery stores? They're
actually ongoing. They're under contract with the city of Youngstown, so it's no letter of intent.
With any potential stores, are there any letters of intent or anyone biting?
I can't give you that right now, you know, but they have contracts and they have clientele that would tend to work with this market. So I don't have those direct information to you, but they're on contract with us, so we're in constant conversation with them.
Right, okay, so I know you can't say maybe who is interested, but can you describe the types of stores that might be interested? Would this be maybe a specialty market, or more so like a budget, friendly, family-friendly type of store?
Lindsay, I told them that I wanted a full-scale grocery store for our families. I wanted to make sure that it provided all the nutrition, the fresh fruits and vegetables that anyone can have, and I wanted to make sure that individuals had an opportunity to pick what type of brand they wanted. I like peanut butter. I wanted to make sure that they have my type of peanut butter, and I don't want to just take their brand. So we've talked often times of our basic needs and what needs to happen during that time. So those are things that we've put out there, and this is what they do nationally.
Are there any hurdles that they're mentioning to you as to why they may be hesitant or not interested in moving in, aside from the pandemic and economic?
Actually, it's an ongoing issue where there's been disinvestment in urban community across the nation. I mean, look back when we had the bottom dollar. Aldi's came in and bought out bottom dollar just to shut them down. And we have the money here. Individuals are spending the dollars, but we've got to make it attractive for them. And there has to be a buy-in from the citizens as well. So when I talked about earlier, there needs to be private, public, but it needs to be all hands on deck for the central grocery store. And I think Mr. Kelly said it best, that if you put that grocery store there, individuals have to shop. This has to be a community issue. We all must say that we want a grocery store, but when it comes to, well, I don't want to pay this much, we've got to support this once it happens.
All right, we're going to move on to another question. This will be our final question, and it's regarding quality of life, and we're going to talk about housing. A house is still the largest investment that people will make in their life. According to Zillow.com, the typical home value here in the city of Youngstown is $31,714, and then if you compare that to the average across the United States, that's $269,039. There's a discrepancy there, or rather discrepancy, and I'm wondering what can be done to improve home values, make these homes a little bit more attractive, these neighborhoods. We've worked on blight in the past, but the next topic and questions will go to Derek.
All right, thank you, Lindsay. Councilman Oliver, you're building a home in downtown Youngstown. You said you want to see that happen all over the city, but you and your wife have very successful careers. Is it realistic for the average resident to build a home, and how would you help that process along if elected?
Absolutely it's possible for everybody to build a house. My thing is I have something called vision, and I can see things that are there even though they're not there. All right, so take for instance our lot where we purchased our house. It was nothing but trees and trash and junk, right? So we turned that into our dream home, invested in right here on the south side of Youngstown. So I would just like every citizen to see every vacant lot as a future home. You don't have to spend the money we spent on a house. You can spend $10,000, $20,000, $30,000 and build what you want and get what you need out of a home. What I would do to help our citizens with that is advertise and let them know about our grants, our tax abatements when it comes to new construction or home remodeling. What I would do to help even with this $88 million is to leverage it into a GAP program. So if somebody wanted to build a house or wanted to remodel their house, but they just didn't quite meet where the appraisal is, the city would step in and fill that gap with some funding, long as they stayed in the house for a certain amount of time. So I think we already have tools in place, and I think with the building of our house, we broke the red line on the south side, so banks are lending now. So what I would do is walk our citizens through the process of rebuilding their own community.
All right. Mayor Brown, attractive, welcoming neighborhoods are essential in getting people to want to live in the city. As you travel through many parts of Youngstown, that's just not what you see. The city recently completed a strategy to improve housing conditions. Some key parts include developing and incentivizing home buyers and encouraging development of new and existing housing. How do you make that happen for a city that ranks as one of the poorest cities in the country?
I think you first look at workforce development. Individuals have to have jobs. First of all, we need to make sure they're job training, they're job ready, and they have job access. But what I remember, Derek, is I used to work for the university, and we had a program called Buy Into Youngstown. These were individuals who were ambitious about, I want to own a home in the city of Youngstown. And you went through the program. And the program really gave you the ins and outs. It was just not about paying your mortgage. It looked at your spending habits. It looked at every facet of anybody who's been a homeowner. You know there's some pieces that you don't see one month and then you see it another. But I think the big piece for us is now that we're going to have help. We have the housing strategy as one opportunity to do so. But I talked about those 500 vacant properties across the city that we wanted to take down with the ARP. Now the D in HUD stands for more than just demolition. It stands for development. And now we have the Secretary of HUD is now a former mayor from Cleveland, and we've already had conversations with her about places like Youngstown, because she says her heart is for small communities and legacy cities like Youngstown, Ohio, who's recovering from the steel mill boom. And that's what we need to make sure that individuals who want to do it. The last thing I'll say is, I was just with the mayor of Cincinnati yesterday, and we talked about what's going to impact Youngstown the most. CRA expansion. Expand your CRA where individuals can invest no matter where in the city of Youngstown, all of our census tracts. We just actually put the legislation up today. So those are just some tools that we need to make sure we're doing, and make sure that individuals who have lead paint in their home, no matter what your income, I want to use some of this ARP money to make sure that you can remove that lead from your home.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Kelly, what steps do you think can be taken to make the city more attractive to live in and give people better opportunities to own a home?
I think a major step is teaching kids in every kid in every neighborhood and every teenager and every adult that they are able to own their own home, show them how to own their own home, teach them how to be financially fit, putting them on that path, so then when we do teach them the soft skills and career-ready skills they need, as Mayor Brown was saying, that they can get the job, maintain the job, grow, and all paths lead to Youngstown people owning Youngstown homes and Youngstown neighborhoods. I think we're cleaning up blight, we're demolishing homes. It would be great if we could empower different kids through pathways to trades or through whatever program if we could actually be watching the grandparents that can build those homes one day. And what it all comes back to is every path with every program needs to lead to Youngstown people owning Youngstown homes and Youngstown neighborhoods.
Thank you.
Any rebuttals? No? Okay, thank you so much. Everyone, just take a moment to thank everyone for their time. Thank you to the candidates for being here tonight and sharing your thoughts on all of these important issues. These are, definitely important topics that a lot of the folks here in the city are facing, and they wanted to get to know you tonight. So again, thank you for your time and your passion and your answers to our questions. I also want to thank the panelists here. Thank you for your hard work and for being here to answer the tough questions. We're always digging deeper here on 21 News and bringing you the latest local news. We'll have more coverage here on 21 News tonight at 11. Make sure you're tuning in for that. And again, I want to thank Stamba Auditorium for hosting us tonight, and the audience that was here, even though it is limited because of COVID. We're very appreciative for having everyone here. And of course, our crew behind the scenes. It's a big thing to put this on, and so I definitely want to thank everyone involved. Again, the primary is May 4th. Make sure you get out and vote. Our Decision 21 coverage is just getting started. Have a great evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.